I was 16, turning 17. I was in high school, but getting closer to leaving and starting my education outside
Oh,
of it.
don't get
In the
scared now.
days leading up to Christmas, during one of those late nights together, we were watching A Christmas Carol.
Hey,
We
man.
often have movie nights around Christmas, and it's one of my favorite things about that time of year. During the movie, we heard a knock at the door. This wasn't unusual, so we didn't think much of it. My mom got up to answer it, but nobody was there. The street was empty. Our garden wraps from the front of the house around to the back, so she checked along the side of the house too. There was nobody there either. She came back inside, and we resumed the movie. A few days later, I was sitting at the living room table doing exam work when I heard another knock.
That
I
symbiote just
paused my
grabbed
work
someone.
and went to answer the door, but again, nobody was there. We assumed it was probably neighborhood kids playing a prank. Where I'm from, kids sometimes get bored and cause trouble instead of finding something better to do. In Scotland, there's a game called Chatty. Kids knock on someone's door and run away laughing. It's
Called
stupid,
Ding
but
Dong
as a
Ditch
kid,
over
the
here.
adrenaline rush of someone opening the door to nobody there can be weirdly fun.
Ding Dong Ditch
We
in the
have a family
States.
group
In
chat where we
Pittsburgh.
keep each other updated on things. Throughout that week, several family members mentioned experiencing the same thing. The one that stood out the most was something my dad experienced. At the time, my dad usually stayed up later than everyone else, either playing Xbox or watching shows once the house was quiet. One night around 11:30, when the street was silent and all the kids would have been inside, he heard a very quiet knock. He was confused because of the time. He checked through the peephole before opening the door, but he saw nobody. He slowly unlocked and opened the door to look outside. Again, nobody was there, just a
Okay.
quiet, empty street. He locked the door and came upstairs to ask if anyone had heard it. Because the knock was so quiet, nobody else had. This started to unsettle us because it had been happening repeatedly. Nobody had ever seen or heard anyone outside except for the knocking itself. Usually when kids do this, you hear them laughing or running. This felt different. Christmas Day, and everything escalated. We spent the day with family, with presents, sharing gifts, watching movies, playing games, and doing way too much food. It was a great day. Later that night, I felt sick from eating so much, which I always do Christmas. So I went upstairs to lie down. I ended up dozing off. Woke up hours later. I checked my phone. It said 2:01 a.m. Everyone else was in bed. The house was completely silent. I knew I wouldn't be able to fall back asleep because once I woke up, it's hard for me to sleep.
I just
again,
fell
no
asleep
matter what
here.
time it is.
I just fell
I
asleep.
stayed on my phone in the dark, scrolling social media instead of turning the TV on, watching Christmas present videos and messaging friends who are still awake. It's normal during Christmas break when there's no school or responsibilities, and you try to enjoy the freedom before going back to exams and routines. After a while, a faint knock. I wasn't sure if it came from my door, my window, or if I imagined it. I sat up straight again, staring into the dark room, my heart racing. I didn't want to. I knew nobody should be outside at that time on Christmas night. I didn't know if the past few weeks were just getting into my head, or if someone was actually inside the house. My room was on the second floor, so someone being at my window would be very unlikely. After what felt like forever, I finally worked up the courage to open my bedroom door. As I did, I heard what sounded like footsteps coming up the stairs. My brain immediately assumed it was my dad going to bed after staying up late like he usually did. I stepped into view of the staircase to tell them I was still awake and heard the knocking again. That's when I realized it wasn't my dad. It was a man I'd never seen before. I immediately felt sick when I saw him. I wondered if this was the person behind all the knocking.
Hey, need a dance
Inside
partner?
the house.
I've been waiting.
I staggered as he climbed the stairs, and was heavily intoxicated. I strode backwards forward, nothing without seen. I never shut the door. The people walking around with open doors, going into each room one by one. I completely froze, didn't know what to do. Felt like all my common sense disappeared. Actually, I opened my door slightly. I saw him coming out of my younger sister's room. That's when my phone finally kicked back into action. I ran to my parents' room, woke them up, telling them there was a man inside the house. Mom woke up instantly. My dad was still drunk. We went downstairs together, found the man passed out on the couch with my dad's ears open and scabbard in pocket. Mom shouted at him to get out. He woke stunned, angrily insisted the house belonged to him. We tried to get him up, but he was completely dead weight. My mom slapped him trying to wake him. A few minutes later, my dad came flowing downstairs, saw what was happening, and he took control of the situation. He shouted at me, this was not his house, threatened him to leave. My dad eventually had to physically lift him off the couch and drag him out the side door. He forced him outside, warned him not to come back before shutting the door. I thought it was finally over, but seconds later, the last suddenly shattered for us. The man had punched through the window, setting broken glass inside. He pushed his face inside the broken glass like something out of The Shining, while my dad went to call the police. The man started shouting aggressive threats, saying he never owned the house, and he knew what we looked like, and that he would return. Needless to say, we're all in shock. It was hard to believe someone would do something like this on Christmas night. Eventually he left, and the police arrived. They took statements from all of us. I knew the longest since I had seen him first. Not long after, the police left. Luckily, because it was the winter, and it snowed that night, which is actually rare where we live, since we usually just get slush.
Scotland.
There was a clear trail of blood leading down the street. Police followed it to a nearby playground where they found a man lying on the ground with blood and glass in his hands. They arrested him after. Later confirmed they believed he was the intruder. The window was replaced the next morning. We told my siblings what had happened. Surprisingly, they slept through the whole thing. They knocked out all the Christmas food. Later, I got a restraining order against the man because of my age and the threats he made. He was fined for the damage and given community service instead of jail time. The police questioned him about the weeks of knocking at our door before the incident and claimed he knew nothing about that, denied ever doing it. It turned out, he actually lived in our house years before we moved in. He claimed there was no bad intention, said he had simply drank too much while out with friends, and accidentally went into the wrong house. Thankfully, nobody in our family was seriously hurt. The only injury was when he was almost from slapping him while wearing bracelets. Apparently that hurts you more than the person who hit him. To this day, we still have no explanation for the knocking that happened before that day. Even now, sometimes I feel like I hear it knocking.
Driving, not great.
It's just in my head. Maybe it isn't.
Think you're
I guess I'll
ready?
never know if it was
guys.
him or someone else out there watching.
Hey guys, can you drop yourselves off
If
at
you
the
look at
nearest
the ages
jail?
of 27 to
Big
34, they're
mistake,
doing two
fighter!
fights. And I at some point propagated something.
Sorry, y'all. This guy's driving like a jack-off. Wait. Yeah, got it.
This happened around 2010. It was about 6
Got it.
years ago.
Got it.
Emily and I were
Ooh.
in a small neighborhood in Springfield, Oregon.
I like that one.
It was my older brother, sister,
I like that
and
one.
my dad was deployed at the time. I was really close with my
Glad I was
dad.
able to
Always
stop
took
this
it hard
before
when he was
someone got
away.
hurt. Well,
Late one
someone
night,
else.
I sat on the porch with my mom while she smoked a cigarette and watched the rain. While we were sitting there, cold but enjoying the rain and the tourists come down, we noticed a man walking in the middle of the road. He was wearing one of those oversized yellow rain jackets. It immediately caught both our attention because it was pouring rain really late. There was no one else running out.
Get out of that
After
box.
watching, he began walking slightly toward our driveway. And stood up, grabbed my hand, put her cigarette out, watched as the man stopped walking right next to our garbage cans in our driveway. My mom turned to take us inside. The man began yelling at us. I don't remember what he said, but I remember being so terrified as my mom rushed me inside. As soon as we got inside, Mom locked the door and turned off all the lights. At that point, I was terrified. Of course, being a kid, I started crying. I watched my siblings shushing us. We all went and laid in my parents' king-size bed together as we were all a bit worried. But nothing else happened. There was no more yelling or noise or anything, so we all drifted to sleep. That night, I had a terrible nightmare I can still picture to this day. There was other men in a big yellow rain jacket peering through our window. I woke up terrified, crying, literally shaking my sister awake just so I could tell her I was scared. I had no idea how much time passed. My sister got out of bed and walked me to the bathroom that was attached to the bedroom. She shut the door and spoke with me while I cried, trying not to wake my mom or brother. But while we weren't there, I suddenly heard banging. burst out of the bathroom and started shaking my mom awake without saying anything. Naturally, my brother woke up from the sound too. I sat terrified in the bathroom, and I no motion for my siblings to join me. I watched her walk out of the room toward the front door. My siblings and I were scared out of our minds. This man was still repeatedly banging on the door. Someone trying to find her old BlackBerry phone, seemingly failed, because when she came back, she didn't have it. And none of us could call the police since this was the only phone in the house. We sat there in silence, listening to the man. He was not screaming and yelling for us to let him in, still banging loudly on the door. It was honestly a really hopeless and fearful night. It was just the five of us with no phone to call the police. My dad, who was meant to our protector, was gone. We sat there on the floor huddled together, freaking out and praying our neighbors would call the police. Eventually the man left, and no police ever came. What was strange is that it was a small neighborhood where we lived close together. The house specifically was a duplex, so how not a single neighbor heard this and called the police. Eventually we went to sleep. Everything was okay for a while. Not even a few weeks later, still just the five of us at my home. We woke up to my front door wide open, along with the window open and a huge hole cut into the window screen. My mom and me called the police. There were lots of random items missing, including my piggy bank filled with all my holiday savings, and random items around the house. But the most disturbing thing missing was a giant cage filled with cash and coins that my family had been saving for months. The sickening part was that it had been on my nightstand right next to my bed where we were all sleeping. This was a long time ago. Sadly, my mom has since passed. My dad wasn't there when it happened, so I'm not really sure what other details I might have missed. I do know that the intruder was at the car. I also don't know if the same man who was harassing us that night was the same person who broke into our house weeks later. It could be connected or it could not be. We know that none of us were harmed, which makes me feel like maybe it wasn't the same person, because that man seemed really aggressive for someone who just wanted money. On the other hand, I later found what looks like the same giant bait sitting on the porch of a neighbor who was a man that lived alone, that we never really saw. So honestly, I was
Rain so long.
This happened to me almost 3 years ago, almost to the day, while I was in Idaho serving a full-time mission. The town that me and my companion, who I'll refer to as Spencer, were assigned to was quite small, and there wasn't always a lot for us to do. And on top of this, at the time, I was going through a rough patch. Things like self-esteem issues and having trouble sleeping. So as a result, we found it difficult to stay out all day doing work. One other thing about where we were assigned was that we were living in an actual house, albeit a tiny one. Usually we only ever get apartments. I guess for this area, a house was the only option, probably because there were no apartments anywhere nearby. The layout of the house was fairly simple. As you walked through the front door, you entered the main room where our desks were, and immediately to your right was our bedroom. If you kept walking straight, you'd walk through a large open doorway that led right into the kitchen. From there, to your right was the bathroom, and to your left was the laundry room. And that was it, besides one storage closet in the kitchen as well. One other detail was that although the house technically stood on its own lot, the landlord's house was right next door, and anytime we had problems with something, we could just walk over or call him. On this particular night, I was sitting in the living room at my desk on my phone, with my chair turned to face the kitchen, and Spencer was sitting in the bedroom on his phone. It had gotten dark outside a couple of hours earlier, so we returned home and were just relaxing before we went to bed. In the middle of whatever I was doing, I heard a single knock come from the window above the sink. Because of the layout of the house, where this window was, you could basically see the whole living area where I was sitting. I looked up at the window for a few seconds. I only saw darkness. I went back to what I was doing.
I'm
I
Upper
began to
East
think that it
Side
must have
Rich.
just been a branch or something.
Upper
There
East
were
Side
large
Rich
trees
Bumps.
behind the house. The more I thought about it, the more unlikely it
Upper
seemed.
East Side Rich
None of the trees
Bumps.
were close enough to the house to brush the window that way. It wouldn't have made a knock sound like the one I heard. In the middle of having this thought, I heard another knock around the corner at the window in the laundry room. The full weight of what was happening was finally coming into focus, but my mind was still looking for an explanation that didn't conclude that someone was outside circling the house, stalking my companion and I. I started to tell Spencer what I had heard from the living room. As I was, another knock came from the window of the living room, the one right next to me. I didn't see who it was on the other side, and I didn't want to. I jumped up and ran into the bedroom and locked the door. I asked Spencer if he heard it too, and he said yes. We started debating what to do. All we had for weapons were a couple of knives. We didn't know how many people were actually out there, or if they were armed, so going to confront them on our own was out of the question. During our discussion, the knocking sound moved from the window in the living room to the front
Let's
door.
go, y'all!
Moved on more and more feet down. We briefly debated calling the police, but we were in the middle of nowhere. It would take them forever to get out there to help us. Then Spencer remembered we had the landlord's number. He called him and began explaining the situation. By this point, we hadn't heard a knock at the door for a couple of minutes or so, and I knew what that meant. I was dreading it when it finally came. Knocked on our bedroom window. The blinds were closed, so we couldn't see who it was, and they couldn't see us. But that didn't make me feel much better. Spencer told him someone was stalking the house, and he said he would be right out with a shotgun. I waited for another few minutes, anticipating another knock, but nothing happened until finally our landlord came to the door and announced himself. We asked him if he had seen anyone. He said no, that he saw a pickup truck speeding away as he approached the house. I asked if he had gotten a license plate or any other features that could help the police.
There's an
And he said
ambulance
they had
nearby.
already been too
I can
far
take
away
you
for
to
him
it.
to see
You're
anything.
a lifesaver.
Spencer and I grabbed our flashlights and circled the house with him. There were small patches of snow on the ground from a weather system that had come through a few days earlier. And in the snow, we saw footprints indeed circling the house. And as far as we could tell, there was only one step. We debated calling the police, but we knew that they wouldn't be much help in tracking the guy down. The landlord said to call him again if the guy came back. With that, we went back into the house, locked everything down, and tried to sleep, but we couldn't. The first thing that came to mind was other missionaries playing a prank on us. But if that was the case, then why didn't they reveal themselves or say gotcha or something like that at some point? Also, it was past curfew. Everyone was supposed to be home, and the closest missionaries to us were at least 20 minutes away. The other possibility
We're
was
close.
that it was some
You're doing
teenagers
great.
from the ward playing a prank.
I
But that
know,
didn't seem
it's
likely either,
heights.
especially afterwards. Because again, they would have come back and started laughing at us. And there was only one set of footprints we found. If it was a prank, I feel like that would have been a group thing to do. After the fact, no one ever fessed up when we did some asking around. But to this day, I still have no idea who was outside or why they chose to harass us. But the scariest thing to me wasn't the knocking or how the only thing separating us from him was a thin layer of glass. The fact that I likely looked right at this guy when he first knocked on the window in the kitchen
There.
and didn't even
We're all
know it.
set.
From
And I
that
hope
day
the worst
forward,
is over now.
my sleep only got
You're a good
worse.
man,
Nothing
Spider-Man.
worked. My own personal issues did not improve either. I'm not sure I'll ever go back to that house.
Yeah, and so this video was called, I was trying to say it in a distance. Four Scary True Knock at the Door Horror Stories by Mr. Nightmare. Yeah, so now let's ride out into the distance. I believe in giving credit where it's due. Uh-huh.